Hi, I'm Leon, and today I've got the entire XShot Skins series in front of me. Let's go over each of these blasters and talk about them a little. Let's get into it. XShot Skins is one of XShot's more current series right now. It's got 6 blasters in it in total, with the newest being the LockBlaster, and the rest of these coming out at about the same time. And each one of these is a little different, but a little bit of the same. But let's just go ahead and talk about what's universally similar in all of these. And the first thing I'm going to mention is what they come with. This guy right here. This is going to be included in every one of these blasters, and it's just kind of like an advertisement of what blaster you got, the instructions, and a whole collect 'em all page, which has got, at this time, not all of the skins that are like included in sort of the series. The Last Stand's missing a couple, and especially the licensed stuff is missing from this pamphlet, but oh well, what can you do? Each one of these blasters, except for this one, come with this. Second thing all of these blasters do is they come with these new darts. The old XShot darts, the ones with the foam on the top, are truthfully very awful. So I'm happy that we have finally gotten a more than worthy replacement. These are the XShot waffle head darts I've been calling them. These are fantastic darts. These are in my dart rotation just because they're very consistent, they're reliable, the foam is good, and they're decently accurate. They're not the perfect darts, but they are actually really, really good. And I'm happy we are getting a lot more of these. In truth, these are some of the better darts that are currently on the market. And the good news is each one of these blasters comes with a lot of them, which is excellent stuff. So, can't hate that. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about each one of these blasters individually. Alright, and the first one I want to talk about is the Menace. The smallest of the bunch and also the cheapest of the bunch. These typically go for around $3 to $5. They are available in a whole bunch of skins, including the latest Sonic stuff, which is pretty cool. Truthfully, it's a very simple blaster. What you see here is kind of what you get. Priming handle is right here. You go ahead and pull that back. Trigger is right at the bottom, and these tiny, tiny, tiny grips. Man, this thing is tiny. But, like, weirdly in a comfortable way. I have decently big hands, and I actually don't mind holding this blaster. I find it strangely very comfortable. It might just be because it's super small, so it doesn't really have anything that I would be mad about. It's not super weighty or anything, and the prime is fine. In short, that's about all you really need to know. It's got 2 dart storage sort of spots right here. I wouldn't leave darts in them for more than like a couple hours, but to just kind of hold them and get the job done, it's fine. The other thing to mention is the barrel. To go ahead and load and get ready to fire, you put a dart in. This is all it goes. This is as far as the dart goes. Then you pull back and you fire. Shoots decently hard. This thing is a surprisingly potent blaster. Both of them do that too. Like, yeah, dart came back to me kind of shoots hard. That's really surprising for one, a $5 blaster, but two, something of this caliber. I'm very pleasantly surprised with the Menace, and I quite like it. These are more designed to be collected, but even so, these are really worthy of just being blasters in your arsenal. Collect a couple of them, you'll have a good time. These shoot well. Next up in front of me is the Menace's kind of older, bigger brother. It's the Flux. The Flux is the same exact thing you saw with a couple of different adjustments. First, it's a lot bigger, like more holdable kind of bigger. The handle can actually encompass all of my fingers instead of just the one that the other one can, and it's fine. Prime is the exact same, a little back prime, fires, and it's got a nice little kickback mechanic and a slide that actually slides. So on every single trigger pull, regardless of if it's primed or not, it'll go ahead and do this like fake recoil almost. It's fine. In truth, to load, you just go ahead and you put a dart in like this. Unlike the Menace, the dart actually goes all the way in this time, and you can go ahead and put 2 down here to go ahead and load them. And then to prime, then you fire. It also is shooting decently hard. It's not super bad. It's a nice little single-shot pistol that's pretty reliable. And not to mention, these two are pretty old and they still have good performance. But I stuck it in the dart holder to kind of show you one of the things that is wrong with it. These dart holders are not very kind to darts. These are new darts, and yeah, it leaves like little warpings. They kind of buff themselves out after a little while, but it's still kind of a shame. In truth, the Flux is one of the cheaper ones. These go for about $7, or 2 packs are about $12, so $6 each. These aren't bad. And if you're getting like a skins kind of bundle with a couple of blasters, these will probably be the ones included. I know that the Last Stand has a Last Stand in 2 Fluxes bundle, which is fine. Yeah, they all shoot decently well. They're all compatible with a bunch of darts. These are pretty nice. They're reliable. They fit in the pocket. They've got the cool slide, so you don't even really need darts. And they come in a barrage of skins. Right now, these guys are coming into the sort of My Little Pony and Poppy's Playtime skins. Weird. I mean, sure, but weird. Just call me when Freddy Fazbear's on one of these things, and then I'll probably have a change of heart about it. But in truth, these are fine. This is probably my favorite of the bunch, just because of how fun it is. But hey, cheap, affordable, single-shot pistol, shoots decently hard. Moving on to the Dread, this one is pretty cool. Honestly, it's pretty similar to one of the old XShot blasters from like the XL line. I think it was called the XS, and the Nerf Zombie Strike Flip Fury, with the whole rotating the cylinders kind of deal. Truthfully, the Dread is perfect in every single way. It's actually the best blaster in the whole line, and you cannot get anything better. And I like it so much that I have 2 of them. Now to more serious business. The Dread is fine. It's a nice little Flip Fury callback, and it's a almost strong arm, if you would. To prime, you prime back, and you fire once. It shoots decently hard. It's got 2 cylinders for a quick little reload, and it's pretty fun. In truth, that's not the only stuff we have to talk about. First, we just have to talk about the priming handle, which on both blasters is pretty seamlessly integrated into the look of the thing. Like, this top portion here is the entire priming handle, and it actually has the decal continued under it. That was not something that we saw on the Flux's sort of kickback mechanic. This one continues the decal through the whole thing. And it's painted nice and on the top and everything. And in truth, that's the prime. Then if you want to switch your cylinder to a loaded one, you can go ahead and pull this back, and it will switch your cylinder halfway through. Then you go ahead and put your cylinder in place. And if you're already primed, you should be ready to go. But if you're not already primed, then you'll have to prime it and then fire. I recommend rotating before you prime. That way you can get the dart into actual position. That way it doesn't fail to fire on you. So, can't really hate that. The Dread is fine. There is one thing I will note about the Dread with this one particularly, which is that I did have the cylinder sort of rotation mech get misaligned to the point where the cylinders didn't feel like moving. This one is obviously working now because I did have to open it up and go ahead and fix it, which wasn't a hard fix at all. I just had to realign this part, then make sure everything was in position, then go ahead and put the return spring back in place and have a good time with it. In truth, the return spring is kind of the other thing I had fail on this one, where it can be kind of gunked up and just kind of go back really slowly. It's not the end of the world, and it seemed to have fixed itself, so no big deal. Plus, this one's simple enough to open up, even with the rotation mech, and just kind of do what you need to do. Overall, yeah, I like it. This is one of the first ones to end up doing the whole Sonic crossover stuff, and now they're going full frontal with it, where this was sort of the first style they did, and this is their modern stuff now, and they've got a whole line of about five or six of these that are coming out with the whole Sonic stuff. So if you're a Sonic fan, look out for this one in particular. This and the Menace are both doing that. Now, if we're following the pamphlet, this is the next one. This is the XShot Griefer. Yeah, horrendous name. I didn't think I was going to be playing Minecraft when I was holding this blaster, but it's called the Griefer. I guess it's a good time to sort of mention XShot's sort of naming convention stuff with this blaster. They seem to have a sort of interesting, edgy vibe to it. The Griefer, the Dread, the Menace, the Flux, the Last Stand, and the LockBlaster. That one doesn't really fit, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But in truth, what's with the Griefer? Well, it's a 6-shot kind of successor, if you would, to the old Reflex 6. It's fine. It's a 6-shot blaster. To load, just go ahead and take either side of the sort of tapering on the barrel, or at least the barrel guard. Just go ahead and push in. Make sure you push all the way so it doesn't get caught. Then go ahead and prime and fire. It shoots decently well when it wants to. Certainly have had more inconsistent shots than I'd like to mention with the Griefer, but ultimately it feels okay. But we'll do a quick round real quick of head-to-head, and we'll talk about something. This is the Reflex 6. This is the original sort of 6-shooter that XShot did. And it primes and fires and loads the exact same way. One of the things about it, though, is it is significantly stronger by a decent amount, and it never really likes to fail to shoot. The other thing is, take a look at that size difference. Yeah, that's pretty jarring. The griefer is really big, and it makes it hard to throw this in a pocket or actually use it as an effective sidearm, compared to even the Reflex 6, which did have some darts sticking out, but you could throw in a pocket and then grab it when you needed it. It feels like the griefer, just like that Dino attack blaster that they were making, aren't really designed to be the most effective of sidearms, which is a little bit of a shame. In truth, this blaster is also incredibly hard to find nowadays. I did look everywhere, and I mean everywhere. TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Burlington, a whole bunch of things. I looked kind of everywhere for this blaster, but the only one I could find was a 2-pack for about $18 on Amazon, putting these for $9 a blaster instead of the normal retail of $10 a blaster. Oh well, it's fine. It's an inoffensive little pistol, well, little is a bit of a stretch, with some ammo holders down here, priming handle here, cylinder that's a little harder to access than I'd like, and the trigger. Fine. Nothing really to note. Handguard here, which I sort of disagree with, and fake rail down here. Oh well, it's the griefer. It's fine. Now let's go ahead and talk about the biggest of the bunch, the Last Stand. Last Stand is a 14-round cylinder, which is pretty odd. 14-round cylinder pump action blaster. To prime, you go ahead and prime like that. Then you can fire once, and you have to do it again. This slam fire enabled, right there, and it's fine. It's got its stock, which is, I think, a decent length. It's perfectly fine. I think it's a decently universal size. Trigger, slam fire, and the whole kind of works with the cylinder. To load, just simply find an empty port on the cylinder, push in your darts, and then go ahead and get ready to load it, and then fire. Hey, fires pretty well. So, all is good, right? Well, no. Everything's not good. Everything's actually awful. This blaster is the cheapest of the bunch with the just sheer construction. It bends, it creaks, it makes awful noises. And because of that, this thing isn't reliable in the slightest. This one is actually broken right there. I tried to prime it, but I primed a bit too hard, so it threw the thing back. No big deal. It doesn't skip the cylinder or anything, and it doesn't, like, fail to kind of prime the next time. So that's okay, you know? But that means that this blaster is the only one to break in a sort of reasonable, usable way. Because this isn't the first one. This isn't the second one. I have 3 of them. 3 of them. And all of them are broken in a different way. One of them is still usable. The dragon one, which you see before you. That's cool. Cool little thing. This one randomly slam fires. Right there. Right there. Right there. And this one is so inconsistent with its chambering, skipping cylinders, and slam firing. It's so unusably bad that I had to retire it. And best part is, this isn't even my newest one. I bought this one and the Game Over one at the same time. This is the newest one. And this one broke maybe after 2 Nerf wars. This thing has broken, but in a way that makes it, I don't know, actually usable. That's inexcusable. This is your flagship of this line, and it can't even function. It is so cheap that I can bend it. I don't even trust this priming handle after a while because it feels so hollow that I feel like I'm going to either snap it or it's going to snap the blaster. This is ridiculously cheap, and all of these do feel this way, but when you put that kind of plastic on one of these, it makes it so hard to trust it. Otherwise, this thing would be a slam dunk if it didn't break, and I'd want 3 of them because these would be easy enough to hand to new players. They would be fantastic. Who doesn't want a 14-round cylinder blaster that just fires well and works well? If it was like that, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. Man, this thing is awful, and it's such a letdown because I like everything it tries to be, but it just fails at everything. On a much more positive note, here's the LockBlaster. I had a early review with this thing, the second review on this channel, and while my opinion is still the same, of a whole wait for a sale kind of deal, the LockBlaster has turned itself around for me. It's seen more games since that review, and it still doesn't feel like stopping. Yeah, no weirdness, no whatever. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's seen probably about 10, 20 more matches since that review, and it won't fail. My opinion is still the same because my first one, LockBlaster 331, is still broken and broke after one outing at a Nerf war, but that's okay because this one is fine. In truth, always wait for a sale, and that's my recommendation on it, but I can't really hate it as much anymore. And despite what I said in that video, that one might have been 11. So make sure you buy the insurance with this thing. But let's just go ahead and go over it real quick. This one is one of the weirdest of the XShot Skins line because it's the most recent one to come out. It only has one skin, that being the sort of chained up lock attitude, highly confidential if you would. And it's also one of the weirder blasters because it has an additional gimmick besides the whole skins thing. It also doesn't have any painting on the top or the bottom besides the code wheels, so it's a kind of weird include. It doesn't seem to have the weird naming convention that the rest of them do. This one's just called the LockBlaster, so it completely ruins every sort of ounce of cohesiveness, but hey, that's whatever. To prime, it's a lever action, so you just go ahead and like that, and you can fire with the trigger right here. It's got the cylinder that holds 8 rounds, is an 8-round shot, and to load you just go ahead and you put in your dart, put the cylinder in line, and fire. And it actually shoots pretty hard. It's just like the rest of these where it shoots just that little bit above average to make me kind of like it. Code wheels are down here, but I'd honestly recommend you check out my individual review for this thing because I'll go into how to break into these code wheels as well as more kind of more general stuff. But in truth, I did want to include this in the group review because it is part of the XShot Skins line and I did want to give it a second opinion. So while you can go back and watch that sort of other review, I'd also like you to go ahead and stick around just to see what I have to say. I'll talk about a couple things I did miss though. First, sling mount here, so you can actually hold this thing as a secondary. And second, this thing is honestly decently reliable. So yeah, the LockBlaster is pretty cool, just like the rest of these. Now, let's go ahead and see all of them, not just this, fire. Gonna have to wait on my firing demo because he's right there. And I want to leave him undisturbed. These are packaged fresh darts for this firing demo. And the only times I'll do this. The Menace is up first. To the Flux, you have 4 of these. Thread number 1. Thread number 2. This one has the issue, but you can tell it's working. from the reload holders, I've got both sides to showcase it. It's the briefer. That's my opinion on it. It's the briefer. Just for comparison, here's the Reflex 6, one of XShot's honestly best. Biggest and most expensive, here's the last stand. This one's also broken. No misfires, a couple of weird primes. That's my casing, here's the Enigma. Hand's not on the trigger. Hand's not even on the trigger. You have slam fire, but not that time. Okay, last one. Please don't fire. It worked! Oh man, next one's coming up, it's gonna be bad. I'm as surprised as you are. Let's try it again. Okay, I'll go a little harder on this one now. This is take 2 with the game over. There it is. LockBlaster 161. Excellent. I won. LockBlaster. So, you've seen me talk about the whole series. You've seen the whole series fire. Now let's go ahead and just talk about a whole bunch of things real quick. First, I want to talk about the price points for all of these. This is 5. This is about 7, but 2 packs say it's about 12. This is about 13. This one is supposed to be 10, but the only thing I could find was the 2 packs, so that's about 18. This thing is supposed to be 25, sometimes 20. And this is supposed to be 15. These are in chronological order. These according to the pamphlet. This is just because it released last. So let's talk about them. First, I want to talk about the Menace. The Menace is probably one of my favorites of the bunch just because it's really powerful in this tiny pistol form. That's pretty cool. I'm happy that we have that kind of power in this blaster specifically, and since it's the cheapest of the bunch, it's really hard to hate. I've got nothing but a positive opinion on this one. I think it is honestly an essential for your emergency backup kit if you can deal with the dart sticking out. The Flux is probably my favorite of the bunch just because of the kickback mechanic. I also think it's a decently reliable pistol, something that's got a decent form factor to it, 2 speed loading ammo slots, and it primes and fires real well. If you can deal with just a tiny bit of dart that sticks out on this one, I think you've got a winner. Plus, that's super fun. I like the Flux. Decently cheap, comes in a bunch of colors, and hey, it's honestly pretty reliable too. The Dread is not my favorite, I won't lie. I did start my Nerf stuff with the Flip Fury, but I've always kind of not liked the Flip Fury too much just because it was too big to hold as a sidearm, but too small to sort of hold as anything more substantial. In truth, the Dread isn't really any different, but it's nice and reliable. It's got easy enough internals to fix, and honestly, yeah, it's fine, you know? I think it's a cool mechanic, and I'm happy that it's got a ton of Sonic stuff to it, Because for your smaller, more fun Nerf wars, and maybe for people just starting out, the Dread is actually one that I could recommend. Honestly, even though I did have a bit of a breakage with this blaster, it was nothing that I couldn't fix, and it was perfectly reliable. Maybe I disagree with the sort of guardrail here, but apart from that, I like the Dread. I can't really hate it. Maybe 13's a little high. I prefer 10. I was a bit disappointed by the Griefer, to be honest. It's too big to be a sidearm, but it's too small to kind of be anything else. But it doesn't really have that same excuse like the Dread has. It's just big. And the ammo holders kind of suck. They kind of don't really hold darts too well. And it just kind of felt very... I'll use the term mid. It felt like a mid blaster. The Reflex 6 was everything I could have wanted and more. And I was hoping that the Griefer would be the same. I was very surprised by how big the thing was when it came in. And another thing is the handguard just so happens to get the bottom of my finger, which I don't really like. Cut this off, and I think you would have had a very effective package. And then I would have liked it a bit more. And it's a little inconsistent, but in truth, I can't hate most things about this blaster. It's fine, hard to find, maybe it should stay that way. Can't hate it. This thing, the Last Stand, $25 and it can't even work? That's ridiculous. This thing, I hate this thing. Out of everything on the table here, I hate this thing, and I don't think it's very forgivable. It is so unreliably bad, and 2 of them out of the 3 I own broke. Oh, sorry, 3 of them out of the 3 of them broke, but just 1 of them I got lucky and it broke in the right way. That's ridiculous. This thing is cheap. This thing is not worth 25, not worth 20, not worth 15, not worth any amount. Really, it's just dodge this one, because you'll be burning that money, and you'll probably have a more fun time watching this sort of embers go all around in the fire than you would with this thing, because you're going to try to run it, and it's just going to be like, oh, sorry, broke it now. I really wish this thing was better, because it'd be the perfect hand-to-a-new-person kind of blaster, but it's not. I've come around to this thing. The LockBlaster goes for about 15, and honestly, my initial review was a little more negative, most because of this thing. And this review is going to be a little different. Approaching it from the fact that this one is working now, and it's been very reliable, I can't hate it. I would certainly wait for a sale, because once again, it seems like it's doing the XShot curse of breaking and being kind of unreliable. But maybe if you can get it for 10 or 13 or so, you should be okay. Truthfully, anything below 12, I'd be really happy with it, because then you can use that extra money you saved for the sort of in-store insurance, and you know what? It's fine. XShot seems to kind of have gotten this one right, although my first one broke, so I wouldn't hold my breath. It is fun, and I can recommend it now, but just be aware that it is breaking. That's each blaster. Now I'd like to just take this final time to sort of address one of the things that makes XShot Skins a little more unique in a less than desirable way. The Last Stand I was able to shake pretty easily and warp and bend and do whatever, because it is bad. Really bad. But it's not just the Last Stands that can do that. The LockBlaster feels a little more substantial towards the top, but it still has this hollow, bendable plastic that makes it... It's why it's 15 instead of 20, because they cheaped out on the plastic. The Griefer can also bend. I can push on the side, and it feels like I'm not really doing anything. I can make the blaster creak and bend. The Dread is pretty bad, too. I can bend the top. I can sort of do whatever, and that's not good here. These are small enough that you can kind of get away, but I can still sort of bend this one. And the Menace is tiny enough that I can't really care, but it still is that cheap plastic. I like XShot because they can make good blasters, but I think they cut the wrong corners to get this thing cheaper. For $5, the Menace is fine how it is. For $7, okay, fine. The Flux is okay too. Maybe this one's 5 and this one's 3. That's fine. But for more substantial blasters, I was really not pleased at this just quality of plastic. And that's why I'm afraid to sort of touch the insanity line. Because if it's the same, I don't know what to do. It's not going to really hurt my recommendations for these blasters because they are priced, except for one, accordingly. 13 is fine. The Flip Fury was way more expensive. 10 is okay. 15 is okay. I think this is 5. 5 is perfect. I think this is 3. 3 is perfect. Or 7 or 5, that's okay. But it's just this cheap plastic that just gets in the way of these sort of wanting to work reliably. The cheapness is why this one failed, and I'm sure the cheapness is why this one failed too. In truth, I really don't mind this series. It made things revolutionary. Paint on all sides of the blaster. All sides. Nothing besides maybe a rail cheaped out on. Maybe not this one. The top is empty, but that's okay. But it revolutionized the way that they sort of design things. And it seems like Nerf took the hint because the Optimus Primal Warden and Corruptor both have that really nice paint on both sides. But as a series, I look forward to XShot Skins. But I want them to be aware that this is unexcusable. Blasters should not be made so cheaply that they break all the time. Truth is, I'm very hesitant to buy XShot. I needed one of these and one of these for this video. So I got them because it wasn't really too bad. At least of a price tag. But I specifically played them to see if they would break. Because I didn't trust that these would have the same kind of issues. I thought that these would have the same kind of issues that this would have. I have been pleasantly surprised for now, but as always, check the pinned comments on any updates regarding any of the blasters you see in front of you. I will update both this review and the LockBlaster review of this one. But now down to the last part of this, which will be my personal opinion. I like what I see in front of me, and if I had to rank them, I'd rank them accordingly. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. And I'm including both of these in my number 1 pick. I think it's fine. I think XShot Skins has got some stuff that they're doing really well, and I do love the graphics of these blasters. At the end of the day, I can't really hate this too much because I like the aesthetic of the game over blaster. But I just wish it worked. But you've heard my opinions on each one of these blasters. Now it's time to tell me what you think. Do you guys have any of the XShot LockBlasters? Did any of the last stands happen to break for you? Because I'd like to hear if yours happened to break. I know if you're really deliberate with a thing, it works, but that's impossible in an actual Nerf war setting. Now, I'd also like to hear your opinions on if you think XShot Skins is too cheap. Would you have paid $5 more for each blaster if it just so happened to be better plastic quality? I know I certainly would have. Maybe not these two. But that's kind of everything. If you like what I do here, please feel free to like and subscribe, and as always, take it easy.